Hey guys, welcome back to the Paladins Alliance. It's been a while. I've been a little off with my scheduling, and I will say that it's due to a lot of events that I have planned, and you will definitely get to know of it very soon. But I have a lot of exciting things down in the pipeline, and it required a lot of scheduling, and for that reason, I wasn't able to pump out a video. So I'm gonna take it a little easier on this one. It won't be a hard analysis video. It's more just an open Q&A that I have for my Patreon members, and for right now, I only have one. So Seon Biswas, shout out to you for providing the support that you do for the channel, and all of the support really goes to the channel, upgrading the camera quality, upgrading the editing that we can get done on the channel, and trying to take more outlandish ideas and bring it to the channel. We haven't necessarily been able to put anything pen to paper just yet, but I have stuff in the pipeline that I'm thinking about that I want to see on whether or not it'll actually effectively work. But the point of this video, monthly Q&A that I've set up for all of my patrons, they can ask any question they want. It's at the lowest tier possible of $3 a month, and for at the end of each month, we'll be able to ask a couple questions that I will go through this video, and you can and I'll answer it to any real topic. Obviously, CS is probably the best option, but if you do have other questions, that is totally understandable. But again, patreon.com/Paladins Alliance, you can sub there. But let's just get into all the questions that Seon had to ask. It's 5 questions that I gave him because I did want to actually make it a lengthy video. So let's just get into it. So thoughts on Xtas move to G2? That is the first question. So I did a report card video on this, and overall, I think Xtas is a fantastic coach. He's done so much with surprisingly little beyond ZywOo on Vitality, right? Like beyond ZywOo, a lot of the players that they had high egos. So you had players like Shox, you had players like Apex, you had players like Alex, who were sharply increasing in their egos as the wins went on. And before they joined the team, yeah, he had to deal with NBK as well. So these are players that have to have a lot of things going right surrounding the team's environment, right? And he was able to not only quell how these egos are in check with one another, but he was also able to bring up young stars that nobody really knew had the potential to become superstars, right? So you had players like Nivera, you had players like Masuta, who honestly nobody really knew. Obviously, in the French scene, that's a different situation. A lot of them knew that they were the up-and-coming stars, but as far as the international scene was concerned, we kind of wrote them off, and we said, this is a huge gamble. It doesn't make sense. It's probably going to pan out like, the Kyojin situation that happened later on down the road. We thought that would happen with these guys, and it worked swimmingly. And although Valve had their whole 6-man crackdown, I think Vitality would be in a different spot right now. They'd be probably heralded as like the best roster to ever start talking about the 6-man roster. So I think all in all, Xtas has done brilliant things on Vitality. I was nervous about the coaching and English problem when he came over to G2, but it seems as though he's already gathered the respect of huge players like Nico and Hunter, who you'd think have previously shown that they don't believe in a higher entity on their organization, and they kind of think for themselves and make their own calls, but they seem to have given all their respect over to Xtas, so that's really cool. And then also on the Alexi B side of things, he seems to be on the same page with that guy also, and Xtas has been sung a lot of praises on Alexi B's interviews and such. So I've been nothing but excited to see what Xtas can bring to the table. It's only going to get better over time. He's even saying that he's not even integrating anything right now. He's just trying to improve what's already there and then build on that over time goes on. So Katowice might be the litmus test of what's already there, but going beyond that, we'll see. EPL is on the horizon, Major in May, and we'll see once we get there, is it actually going to come to fruition, or do we have some kinks to work out? Do we have to overhaul the system once more and see where we're at? So overall, again, as I said in the report card video, Xtas to G2 is a brilliant move, and so far it's panning out pretty well. Okay, so a question that I haven't actually discussed at length on really any social media site altogether, but the second question is, why did the OG project fail? So I think there are a myriad of reasons, and we've seen a couple interviews that the now current OG members have been discussing about Alexi B. I think Valde was the one in particular that I saw, where he was discussing that they weren't actually trying to iron out mistakes, but rather patch them up with like a band-aid situation, move on to another perspective of the game, and try to integrate that as the main idea, right? And I think that's a big thing. But I think overall, it's been talked about many a time, but the whole micromanaging concept that LXB brought upon these players and forced them into their system, right? LXB system. And while it worked at times, obviously at the very beginning of the team, I'd say they probably peaked around Flashpoint 2 slash IEM Summer. They did well, and then I believe they did well at the London groups, and that was the one where they were kind of written off, but they did pretty well there. And from that point on, there were a lot of players that just didn't gel well with Alexi's system, and he always had to play catch up on this team. You had Issa, who was very, like, he was stuck out like a sore thumb on that team, didn't have a clear identity, wasn't able to really put kills on the board, always had the ping problems when they move on online. NBK started butting heads with the IGL systems because, again, when this team was first created, you had 3 callers on the team, all trying to pitch in their own ideas. You had certain players calling on certain sides of certain maps. Like, it was a very confusing system overall, so that effectiveness wasn't there. You had to basically bring up Mantu, a player who had never been on Tier 1 stages, and make him a proficient Tier 1 operator. That is not an easy feat, and we can see that throughout Tier 1 right now. There are still growing pains for a lot of these operators to really become better, and Alexi B couldn't do that. I don't think he was very good at doing that. Instead he tried to micromanage them very hard instead of actually growing them as players and use them more as pieces rather than individuals on a team, right? I hope that kind of comes off in the right way. But other than that, now that you've brought in Nexa, you've kind of opened up the system, right? You're reducing the amount of structure that is on the team, and you are growing these people as individuals, and you're molding these individuals together as a team. And you can see that with FlameZ looking better than ever. He was honestly a far cry from what potential he showed when Alexi B was on the team on his tail end of his tenure there. But I think that FlameZ has so much more to offer. He has such a high skill ceiling, and now he seemed a bit more comfortable. Mantu looked a little bit more aggressive on the AWP, and we haven't necessarily been able to see that. He was a very reserved AWP in that sense, and he seemed more of a guy that was trying to go for the easy shots, couldn't necessarily take over games, inconsistent in that sense. And Nexa is fragging very well. Obviously, we don't know if that level is going to be kept up for as long as it is right now. Obviously, they only have three real maps under their belt, but it's a sign for things to come. And I think the addition of a looser structure and the ability for Nexa to kind of give breathing room to these individuals will definitely help them grow as players. And hopefully the pieces that on paper seem like very good pieces will finally fit together like that puzzle we're trying to expect to be completed. And hopefully they'll qualify for the finals in Blast, and maybe they compete well at Katowice. So we'll have to see on as far as OG is concerned. But overall, I think it's down to those couple of reasons. Third question has to be, who had the better year, ZywOo or Nico? And I have to raise the same sentiments that I did in the Haka video that I did. Did a little cameo on there, and that's where I discussed about how important I think it is for that individual to bring up the team, to bring the team results. Like, how much did that player impact the team's results overall? And let's say I replace that person with somebody else, would that same person be able to provide that same impact, or would they fall off a cliff in that regard, right? Or if I like switched, if Nico was in ZywOo's position or ZywOo was in Nico's position, how would those teams fare? Now, obviously ZywOo had the better year overall, right? But in my opinion, I think the LANs were so much more important in defining what the better team of the year was. Obviously, that's why Na'Vi is the crowning jewel of the year and not Gambit, because although Gambit did win practically everything, and if not, they came in second place in every tournament, right? But they did it all online, and then when they came onto LAN, they were showing semifinal appearances, quarterfinal appearances, but never a title. That was all Navi's, right? And so when I talk about that, I have to similarly move that conversation to Vitality and G2. Vitality did very well for themselves. Lots of top fours, lots of top semifinal appearances, but again, no titles to show for it. I think they won like one online title, and they pushed Navi certainly in a couple of finals on their own. But as far as ZywOo's hand in that, that's another question. Zai was able to do a lot of that online, but as soon as we moved over to the LANs, his impact wasn't nearly as much, right? We had like that Apex interview where ZywOo was where he was saying, if you're not here, we don't qualify. Like, the fact that his impact was shown very, very sparsely compared to Nico is night and day to me. Nico hard carried their result at the PGL Stockholm Major. There's no doubt about that. They would not have qualified for the playoffs. They would not have gone to the finals, in my opinion. The heroic that they faced seemed very, very strong. They could have easily lost that game if it weren't for Nico there. And who knows what position that the G2 could have brought against Navi at the final, right? Although they pushed them to the brink on Nuke, we don't know, right? If you added in a different player that wasn't Nico there, that brought them to that point. So Nico, overall, in my opinion, had so much more impact to the latter half of the year that I had to say that he had the better year. He had the more impactful year. He made G2 a relevant organization, bar all the problems that they were having. You have two supportive elements on your team, and you're telling me that in this day and age of Counter-Strike that can be a relevant team in Counter-Strike? That's blasphemy. You wouldn't really think that's possible. And for that reason, Nico went above and beyond. I truly believe he was a number 2 player of the year over ZywOo. And I know that seems kind of counterintuitive at the concept of the entire year, but in my opinion, the year was made. You make or break the year via those LAN performances at the tail, and that's where champions are made, and that's where I think Nico really defined himself as the crown jewel of a rifler in 2021. Okay, question 4. What does the Brazilian scene need to do to make it back to relevance in Tier 1 Counter-Strike? So I think one of the biggest things off the bat is we need to get rid of the stigma of bringing along the old guard for as long as they have. This whole Last Dance experiment makes no sense to me. You are essentially throwing away a career of Vinny. You are throwing away a career of Bolts, who have a lot to say in their careers, and you're basically spinning on borrowed time, right? Like, you have Fallen, Fur, and FNX. FNX, who hasn't played an official in God knows how long. Fur, who wasted so much time in 0-0 Nation, especially after they signed him for a god amount of money. And you have Fallen, who didn't show any sort of promise on Liquid. And you are basically throwing these youngsters' talents away for this project. And that, I think, will never get you back to relevance in Tier 1 Counter-Strike. What Simple was saying is right. They won't do anything to Navi because they frankly just straight up won't play them, right? They won't even get to that point in World Counter-Strike to play them in any sort of tournament. I think that we need to invest more in the young talent that they have. The Godsend project is something that needs to be carried on to other organizations, other teams, where it is helmed by an intelligent veteran who has seen it all, done it all. Taco has won 2 majors. He has brought countless amount of trophies for the SKLG lineup, and he did that all as a supportive element of the team. And he's been dogged constantly by the community as a scapegoat for the troubles that the team had, when in stark contrast, he was a very cerebral player, and he had a very good grasp of the game, and now he's IGLing some of the finest Brazilian talent we've ever seen. And you wouldn't have heard of some of these players if it weren't for Taco. They qualified for EPL. They did very well for themselves at IEM Winter. We'll see them at Katowice play-in, and I'm sure they have stuff up their sleeve. They're performing at LANs, and this is all because of Godsend and Taco's plan to integrate better talent, younger talent, and building them up as competent Tier 1 individuals. You've reintegrated Phelps. Phelps was actually had his head in his hands at one point in his career, where he had just thrown away all his potential, and now he's one of the stars again on Godsend. So that whole project I'd like to see in effect. And now we obviously have 0-0 Nation pivoting more to that style of play with Try and Malbs. And obviously I consider the skill ceiling of that team to be much higher. We could definitely see something happen with that team. But I don't know about Cold Zero's calling necessarily as compared to Taco's. We'll see whether or not there'll be growing pains in that regard. But I think the concept in nature definitely lends itself to the better side. There is room for that to actually succeed rather than whatever is going on with the Last Dance. It's a waste of money, waste of time, and it's a waste of potential for some of these superstars who still have a couple of years in them to really perform at tier 1, right? And obviously, I have to mention Furia. They've been grinding for quite some time, and now that they have Safi in the pool, they should be a very, very, very good team. They'll easily be the best Brazilian team as of right now. Obviously, their debut wasn't necessarily something that everybody was very excited about. I definitely think they had a lot of sloppy plays against Wisla Krakow, but I think objectively the pieces are there. They have the capabilities of that aggressive art AWP. That still hasn't been figured out to this day. That system, that core is still rock solid as ever. They've been still doming people with that system, and I think the sky's the limit for that team and that core, especially K-Serrato, Yuri, and Art. And now that you plug and play Safi into the lineup, you bring back Art into that aggressive AWP. You have Drop now with the higher skill ceiling that Vinny probably played. Perhaps you can eclipse what Henny with that Henny lineup, right? Perhaps you could get into that top 5 conversation and pick up where you left off. We don't really know about Furia, but I think that him, that organization in general, and then Godsent / 0-0 Nation are setting themselves up for success. And I hope that these 3 teams are the ones that really brings them back to become a real threat in Tier 1 Counter-Strike. Okay, so the final question here is a little bit more of an easier one, but your GOAT in-game leader and why. I mean, obviously you have a couple of options. You have Prime Fallen from the SK days, SKLG days. You have Pronax from the Fnatic days. And then I personally am going to go with Glaive as my GOAT in-game leader. It's a very safe answer, but I think it goes beyond what he did for Counter-Strike, right? And what he currently is doing for Counter-Strike. He's absolutely radicalized the meta as we speak today. It basically paved the way for teams like Gambit now to play this very utilitarian style of Counter-Strike where you are relying on all the resources that you have piece by piece, and you're using the riflers that you have at your disposal in this very structured and regimented style of play, and redefine what the term AWP means. And you're doing this all with a team that objectively could not break the barrier of semifinals at any major event, right? And this guy comes out of nowhere. I mean, not obviously out of nowhere, but he comes back. He gets signed on by Astralis and is expected to do great things for the organization. And right out the gates at E-League, their debut, they were able to storm through a very difficult group, and it didn't seem as though that they were going to do that, especially with the previous results and what Astralis were able to do prior to that. And yet from there on, they just hit the ground running, and it just seemed like this guy had found this flow state with this team and this organization and the players, and he just had such a good understanding of how to use players when and how to unlock pieces that I didn't even think were possible, right? Kirby was an outstanding player during the time that he was playing on Astralis, and he unlocks that talent beyond what MSL was able to do on Dignitas and makes him a major MVP at E-League, right? He defeats Virtus Pro on the brink of elimination with an incredible ballsy force by call. And as big of a fan I am of Virtus Pro, I have to hang my hat and say that Glaive did play it out of his mind in the sense that he called an outstanding game on map 3 train, and he never looked back, right? Like the rest of the majors that he was able to amass with or without KRB, when he signed on Magisk, he made that guy just a absolutely intelligent player. Now he's playing on Vitality, qualified for the major as a primary caller, did Magisk. He's just done so much for Danish Counter-Strike, how much he's done for just Astralis as an organization, world Counter-Strike in general. Like Denmark now treats and heralds Counter-Strike as this behemoth of an esport. And I think it all starts with Astralis and with Glaive. And for that reason, how much importance Glaive has brought to the table for the game of Counter-Strike, I have to consider him as my greatest of all time in-game leader. So those are all the questions that I'm going to go through. I gave him 5 because I just wanted to make it a little bit more lengthy. And I love answering questions like this. Talking about Counter-Strike, just in any capacity, is just always very entertaining for me. So again, if you do want to shoot any questions, join the Patreon. Smallest tier, $3 a month, allows you to ask me any question that you wish. And I'll be hitting them up at the end of each month. This one actually went out a little later than expected. That's why you see the January, and I did it in February. But that's besides the point. I will try to get them before the month ends. But I have a lot of cool stuff planned. You'll probably see a couple announcements soon, and I'm excited for you guys to see. I'm so excited for the upcoming months and the upcoming year. Thank you guys for everything. Thank you guys for all the good support on the Leadify video and the Haka cameo. That's all really great. Thank you to all the new subscribers. I will be getting back on that analysis saddle as soon as I can, and I will catch you guys in that video. So have a good day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.